everybody, good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Justin, and John. How are you all today? Oh, you never got daylight yesterday, Cornico? That sucks. That is sucky. That is the bad about winter. That's why I bought a happy light. Let's see here. I'm going to fix focus at a different level in a moment, but... Yeah, I think we're gonna do... You guys want to do the book today? Let's do the book today. I feel like booking. I don't feel like clothing. So we're gonna put this here, and we're gonna try to make it fixed focus. Perfect. Excellent. And then we're gonna get out some book colors. Book colors! A little bit of dark browns, reddish browns. Need a parchment color. I think I grabbed, I want my creamy ivory, but I think I also grabbed gnawed bone. Gnawed bone. There is a parchment color in one of the fast palettes as well, but gnawed bone is fairly close to it. Any kind of brownish, creamy, pale yellow tan will work for books. You can go more yellowish if you want. It's up to you. If you have a book that you're copying, just do your best to copy that color. But usually you want to have access to a couple of like ivory type colors. Yellowed bone also works. Then you want a couple of darker brownish colors, maybe a reddish color for discoloration on the pages. And the freehand is the last thing you do. All right, and then you also want to keep an off-white around. You can also just mix pure white into whatever you're working with, but I'm going to use bleached linen. So our page triad kind of looks like this. These guys. Gnawed bone, creamy ivory, and bleached linen. And you can see that's actually a very nice triad. That's a very nice progression. So this essentially gives you a triad based around creamy ivory instead of based around yellowed bone, which is what creamy ivory's triad actually is. So we have now made a highlight triad. Yay. You could also sub yellowed bone in for this, but I like gnawed bone a little better because it is a little more brown. I'm going a little less yellow with my vellum, in short. I can't remember what I actually used on this. I feel like I used like driftwood brown or something. Driftwood brown or desert sand or some such silliness. Nope, desert sand's too light. Must have used driftwood. Yeah, driftwood or something close to it. Which is actually another thing that I always said you could do is use driftwood brown with the ivory triad as well, but as a new shadow. So then if you do that, you get a quadrad looking something like this. As you can see, this makes a very nice progression. So make a mental note, those of you who are looking for a warm linen-y off-white or kind of a more natural like cloth color, not bleached, natural fiber color, this can work for you. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of driftwood just to keep a little bit of my base color on hand. Eat to Surf, I actually do not have like all of the line, not even close. But I do have, because I understand the line at a basic level, like a fundamental level, having created it, I do have like what I consider the most useful colors. So I have colors like that, colors that are going to progress into each other. I don't have a lot of the off colors, like I don't have dark elf skin, for example, because I can just mix it. So there are a very large amount of colors that I don't have, especially like if I have a color that I really like, and I have my oranges that I really like, and so I just don't own the other oranges. Things like that. Hello, green users. We are booking today. Booking it. And since we'll have a white color, maybe we'll also put some highlights on our rat friend. Yeah, I really like this gnawed bone color. It's kind of like those who've been looking for a a stained ivory sub. This is kind of similar. I think it's a little warmer. Maybe a little yellower. But it's good. Also, we had no power this morning for a while, so hopefully the stream will continue. And we will not have a power disruption, but I'm just letting you guys know. Because the power company in California is so full of immense suck. Like, and honestly, these people agitate about everything out here, so I'm kind of surprised that they haven't, like, you know, had a come to Jesus meeting with their power company. But maybe that's a Texan thing. We'll see if the Texans manage to exert the force of change upon their power companies. I guess it depends on if they have another bad winter. You're knocking on all the wood available. Which isn't much, right? If you're in, like, you know, your average office building, you're more likely to find particle board. I guess that's close enough, right? Knock on particle board just doesn't sound as good. All right. Where is... So now we've got our little range of colors all nicely set out. As you can see, 4 drops of each. That's what 4 drops looks like. Eat to Surf, I was the one who created the colors, and so what I would do before I named a color, if I thought it looked like a thing, is I would look up that thing. That meant looking at a lot of pictures of, like, old skulls and stuff, which was pretty cool for my bone colors. But Nod Bone was created after I left, and I suspect the name is more poetic than realistic. From here on out, you cannot assume that the names are actually functional, sadly. Before, I could tell you that I actually did look at maggots before naming a paint Maggot White. However, since I've gone, I'm certain that some colors are just being assigned a poetic RPG type name because that's it. And Nod Bone is one of those. Yes, but it's like before I tried to make the names actually look like what they were. Now that may no longer be the case. Or more like I would start with a color concept and then I would be like, what does this really look like? Right. I just don't think that, like, Ron is actually looking up swatches of... I mean, maybe he is. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not giving Ron enough credit. But sometimes I think Ron comes up with the names for things and then he, like, you know, assigns a color to it. Which is a perfectly fair way. That's how every other paint company does their paint. Like, they come up with a cool name and then a cool color, or they come up with a cool color and then they come up with a cool name. And I think what made the Master Series, what continues to make the Master Series line special, though, is that I really did create it for functionality, which, being an artist, you know, as far as functionality goes, there's different levels of that. And I feel like if you don't have an artist in charge of creating your paint line, you may fail on that. Like Pathfinder, there's some obvious color holes, stuff like that. When you need an X color, you reach for it and you're like, wait. So I think the best paint lines have a combo of that. When Games Workshop first started making paint, they actually did have that because Mike McVeigh had a big hand in those early paint lines. But then as time went on, I'm not sure who makes Games Workshop's paint lines these days. Or, sorry, designs, because it's a designer thing. It's not actually a mixer thing. It's a designer thing. It's when you look at the line that you're creating as a whole, and you look at how it looks, and you look for holes. You look for things that people are going to want to paint that they can't paint with their existing colors, things like that. I don't name a color something unless I mean it. Eat to Surf. When I had to create, you've heard this story. I've told this story before. Maybe you haven't heard it. But when I created the blood colors, the Carnage Red, spattered crimson, and clotted red. I actually asked for samples of blood. Actually, I asked my most macabre friend, Jennifer Haley, what the color of capillary blood was. And she nicely stabbed herself and then handed me some on a slide. I'm not making this up. This was at an artist conference. Oh, it's not Bay Area. It's PG&E. All of California is PG&E. It's all because we had a ton of rain and wind, Pendrake. We had a power outage yesterday and we had another one this morning. But yeah, it's that all the wiring is so darn old. That's why we get all the wildfire crap, and they end up paying a ton of money in settlements, legal settlements to people. Apparently they got a new CEO who pretty much came in with a plan of, we're going to spend a ton of money to upgrade all this wiring here. And apparently they're all like giving him the side eye over it, even though they, you know, really need to do it. So we're just going to take our gnawed bone and we're going to begin by highlighting the areas that stick out, like the area coming up here, because as it drops into the shadow, you will see it stay in shadow. You can even see it casting that shadow if you look closely under the light that I've got right here. Ah. Yeah, we had a bunch of wind and rain, which we needed the rain. It was pretty much 2 days of rain. And we still might get more tonight, which is, you know, it's good. The state is in drought. It needs rain. I just wish our power company was competent. And it honestly, like, this amount of wind and rain would be nothing in Texas, because they plan for wind and rain in Texas. Like, we've had much worse than this down there and had no problems. But here, whenever the weather is not 70 degrees sunny and still, or, you know, with under a 10-mile-per-hour wind, apparently, like, our power lords freak out. Whatever, as long as they keep the power on while we are streaming, that is good. So just a little bit of layering here, blocking it in. I just want to kind of set up highlights. I'm going to go back in with some shading and discoloration. I've actually got a little bit of a, it's not a mold line, it's more of a mold flaw. See that little nick? I'm going to actually make that a rip in the page, I think. It's kind of irregular and it would work well as a rip in the page. I'm not sure what kind of molding artifact it is, but, or if it's a tiny hair that I just missed. But it seems like it's actually part of the sculpt, so I accentuate that. No, but at least Texas, when they get like serious wind, rain, and hail, you don't lose power. At least I didn't lose power. And it depends on the area of Texas. And coming from both states, I'm just kind of bemused when relatively, because I mean, yeah, we had a lot of rain and there was some serious wind, but not like, you know, I don't know. It's not tornadoes or anything. My opinion of the power company out here is one that is shared by the residents of the people who have lived here much longer than I have, so I feel a little justified in my, like, what? I'm going to get the edges just a little bit here. We will come in and do a little bit more. It looked like just a kind of a rip in the page. Like, it could honestly be that I missed a hair or something, but I see some other kind of artifacts on the page over there under the rat's tail, which we won't really care about because they're under the rat's tail, so we're not gonna do anything fine and too fine over there. But here on the page it's rather evident, especially because we're probably going to do some freehand, so. And this is why I keep my driftwood brown open, so that I can touch up if my line gets too wide like it did there on the side of the page. And I probably also need a little bit of walnut because I'm going to be doing lettering. Global warming just means extreme weather. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Moving on. Moving on. Whee. But yeah, the reason I'm using walnut instead of brown liner is that when you're doing very small lettering on pages, you need it to be very dark still. And brown liner, of course, when you're lining, you want that thinability to it so that you can make a more subtle you can make a more subtle shade when you're using brown liner. That's why when you thin it, it modifies itself very well. But when you're doing lettering, unless you're doing like lettering that's really fading out, you don't want that. And so I use walnut because I can thin it and still have the line be very dark. You need to be able to thin it to get really tiny little letters and diagrams and stuff, because you have to have a certain thinness of paint to get those really fine brush marks, and for the paint to come off your brush and make those marks. But liner, if you thin it that much, it will start to disappear a little bit. You won't get as solid of a line. So it really depends on what you want. If you like mix brown liner with, say, like russet brown or black and brown, you can get kind of the best of both worlds, get kind of a sepia ink tone while still being able to thin it. But I'm going to thin this 2:1, and if I need to, I can put in another drop of walnut, but I don't think I'm going to need to. 2:1 should still give me a fairly solid color when dealing with walnut brown. Because walnut just has an excellent, excellent coverage. Because it's got a large quantity of high density black pigment in it. Now that means the high density pigment does tend to fall out of solution if you thin it to a little bit too much, but 2:1 should still be just fine. And we'll see how that goes. You also don't want it too stark. And if you do put down lettering and you end up wanting it to look faded, then that's when you glaze with one of these ivory colors. And maybe we'll do that today. So I'm just going to grab a little bit more of highlight colors, and I'm going to continue kind of bringing out details here. And I want to accentuate kind of this rip in the page, so I'll probably grab some of my walnut, mix it with my driftwood brown, and suggest a tiny dark line there. And the reason I mix it with my driftwood is I wanted it to be an artifact on the page. I didn't want it to be lettering. So I don't want it to take it as dark as I would my lettering. So this is a little bit lighter. I am going to try to do suggest some deckled edge over here. So an uneven cut. So I'm going to grab probably my creamy ivory, and because my nod bone won't be big enough difference against the driftwood. There we go. So kind of doing a mix of the nod bone and the creamy ivory to see if that's going to be enough. And you really can only get a few lines in here. You just don't have a lot of room. You may only be able to get like 2 lines in here, and that is good enough. So I set it up so I can get a little bit, and now I'm going to go back in with full-on creamy ivory now that I've got that initial line kind of sketched in. Thanks, Eat to Surf. Yeah. Yeah, I don't usually believe in the whole turn a flaw into a benefit thing, but with stuff like that, it really did already look like a rip on the page. Like it almost looked like it had been sculpted there. So I chose to double down. Usually I am not a fan of the whole, oh, it's a mold line, but I'll turn it into a scar and stuff like that. Because normally those things don't actually look like what you're trying to turn them into. You're trying maybe a little too hard. But There we go. So a little bit of irregularity, suggest stacked pages right in there. But yeah, in this case, it really did look like a rip. You notice I'm not talking as I'm doing the painting. The reason is that I will always, when doing fine detail, if you are trying to be precise, do not like suck your breath in, do not be talking, do not do any of that. Take it a breath and then let it out, release it, and paint, either paint as you release it or at the end of your breath, hold it at the end of your breath. Don't suck in a breath and hold it. You will shake. But when you are exhaling, you are relaxing. At the end of your exhale, you are relaxed, and so you are less likely to shake. So that's why no talking during painting tiny pages. Yep, it's exactly like same thing when you're, I've used the technique in shooting pool. I know friends who use it when throwing darts. Anything that requires that you have a steady hand to get a precise effect, you paint on the exhale. So yeah, absolutely. And it's the same reasoning. You have to get an even squeeze of the trigger. You have to draw an even line. All of these things rely on you being relaxed. So although I can do a great number of techniques while talking, doing very fine detail in freehand is not one of them. Not if you want it to look really good. So the page is coming up now very nicely. I'm going to blend in a little bit down here. We can still see brush strokes. We're still going to do more to the pages too. We're going to work on a rat page now. He's got a little bit of lining blorf around his tail, so we'll take this opportunity to correct it. That's why I didn't bother to correct it earlier, is I know, well, if I'm going to come in and paint this book anyway, I can touch up these little lining blorfs when I do. But yes, if you would like to think of yourself as a paint sniper, feel free. Whatever makes you happy to be doing your hobby. This is true, Pendrick. That'd be a good combo. I think I ordered that with my Reaper order, but I haven't gotten my Reaper order yet. But yeah, you could totally do a little mini diorama with this that way. Just please don't put a huge amount of room between the figures if you do that diorama. Remember, when you do dioramas, you should create them in as little space as possible. The biggest problem with the cat and the Christmas tree, though, Pendrick, is that the way that the tree is sculpted, if you'd almost have to put them facing each other, like, it'd be hard to get the wizard's glare to line up with the cat and you still see the cat's face, I think. Because I think the kitty, if you put the tree kind of pointed this way, the kitty'd be looking back this way. So maybe not the best positioning. That's the thing with finding good models to do dioramas with, is you have to come across two models that are actually looking in the right direction. It's my problem with doing I originally thought I might do a little chibi mini diorama with the werewolf lawn. But then I realized that the model I would have used was facing entirely the wrong way. So it wasn't really workable. So things you think about when you're doing dioramas. So you have to find two models that interact well. And sometimes you can do a small conversion to change the way they're looking, or you can paint it a little bit differently. But all depends on how much work you are willing and able to do. Just gonna turn this around so I can get a better angle over here. Too much. Maybe. I mean, you could always have the cat not facing the wizard. But then it doesn't make sense, like, I don't know. If I'm going to tie them together, I'm going to tie them together. If I'm going to, like, make it obvious that the story is combined, then I'm going to put them on a single base. Otherwise, you might not get it. You might not get the story. But it might work. I don't know. I get the cat before we're done with this model, so since he was part of my order, I can look at it in person and see if it'd work. Might be able to make it work. Alrighty. Book, and I don't mind if I get a little shadow around the feet of the rat. In fact, I probably want one, so I'm going to grab some walnut and mix it with my driftwood again to create a slightly darker shadow. It's very thinned paint still, which I want. I just want to suggest a little bit of a shadow here under Mr. Rat. To give him some three-dimensionality. A lot of people don't do this, but if you are really trying to give a model a sense of, you know, heaviness and weight in the real world, putting in a little shadow does make a difference. This is one of the first things that comic book artists are taught is, like, you can use line to add weight to different aspects of the figure, and you can use shading on the figure to add weight, but it's when you put the shadow down coming out from the figure on the ground that you really see it. You really get a sense then of that model in the real world. Can put a little shadow under the tail for the same reason. It gives it just a little bit of weight there. And then I'm going to put a shadow on the back of the book here just because it's really close to him, and we're not going to do any detailing there. Grab my walnut and touch up the cover a little bit here. There, I feel like the rat is actually present. I feel like I need a little bit more over here. But yeah, putting a shadow under your 28mm models is not a bad idea, all things considered. Well, at least it looks like maybe the rain has stopped. Maybe I'll actually get to walk today. Once again, I'm using a mixture of the driftwood brown and walnut to do some lines, at least one little line here on the side so that we can get those the appearance of that deckled edge, i.e. an uneven cut page. You aren't really trying to do individual pages here. You're more trying to simulate the look of older books when they, and even some new books when they want to give you that old feel. That like it's hand sewn. When you hand sew portions of pages together, you get that uneven edge. And that's what, you know, we would likely have in fake fantasy medieval society here. It's impossible to paint, you know, individual pages at this scale, but it is possible to create that illusion. Alrighty, that is looking all right. I want to get these pages. So just like with any form of weathering, I'm coming in with it after I lay down some of the basics. Though I will do the lettering after the weathering. So here we're going to have a seam down the middle because the pages will be stitched down this center seam. Usually we'll have a little bit of an indent. Once again, we'll mix our driftwood with our walnut. Since both of these paints are thinned, I'm able to get pretty subtle with it. Our book is coming along. Books really come together very quickly. They're a very rewarding thing to paint because they can look so good with just a little effort. You can get them looking really real. A little bit, could get a little darker. Just a couple more lines. And you really don't need to be like super precise. And if you make a blorf, you just paint over it and try again. But all you need roughly is just a more or less a suggestion, and these lines do not need to be perfect. They need to be going roughly in the right direction. That'll be enough of an illusion. Chances are people are not going to get real close to it to make sure all your lines are perfectly even. And they won't be looking at it on a giant screen like this, so... There we go. Yeah, definitely. Pretty subtle, something you won't notice till you look at the interior of the book, but it's not wasted because a lot of times little details like this might be kind of wasted because a lot of people won't notice them, but in a book, that is something that people are going to look in, right? They're going to actually look to see if you did any freehand. So they're going to notice little details like that. My wizard is coming off of his plinth a little bit here. Sit, stay. So I'm putting a lot of pressure on the model as I'm resting my finger on it to paint this tiny book. Yeah, you came in a little late, Twisted Oma, so you missed me doing that. That was one of the first things I did, was to do the rip in the page. Okay, we've got a shadow, shadow, shadows, lovely. I'm gonna bring a little bit more toward the center of the book. Again, gonna use a mixture of driftwood and walnut because I'm really liking that shadow tone that I'm getting out of that. There, good dark shadow of the interior. Now, let's do a little bit of discoloration along the outer edge. We need different colors for this. I'm going to use a little bit of a much more warm brown. Usually books will yellow and go reddish, or orangish, or brownish as they get toward those outer edges. The pages yellow as they get toward the other side, they'll brown out. I'm going to mix up a couple glazes, but we're going to actually paint with these glazes. So I'm going to do a tiny little smear of ruddy leather and russet brown. Because I don't want this to be really stark. I want it to be more subtle and to kind of blend in. So I don't want it to be quite a glaze. It's going to look more like a weak wash when I look at it in my palette. Or in the case of the ruddy leather, I had a little more paint so it looks like a real wash. Layering is really just painting with washes anyway. That might be a little strong. There. So I'm pretty much thinning these 1 to 2 paint to water. And now I want to bring in some colors. Some discoloration. On the edges of this book. And this is really, really thin paint. Like I said, I'm pretty much taking a paint that I would normally layer with, and instead I'm stippling with it. To bring up a texture slowly instead of quickly. See how that's darkening down gradually. This is keeping it to scale. You could go stronger with your stipples if you were doing a very large book. Something on a bust, for example. Then you would want these little dots to stand out more. But if you were actually looking at a book from a distance, like that would make it this size, you would not see the individual speckles. You would just see the overall color shift. So this is us keeping it kind of in scale. So darkening down that page, bringing in a little bit of dirtying, seeing how that stippling kind of makes an irregular surface. See how that makes it look dirty. And that's just with the red brown. Now I'm going to go in with russet. Russet brown, again, being like a burnt umber. Very traditional color to use in painting. Gives you a nice warm shadow. A little bit of extra irregularity. Again, these are very thin. So that mostly we're just trying to give it kind of that splotchy old look. So it looks like the pages are almost cloudy. That's how it should look. Like so. You can take this really dark. Some books that have gotten exposed to moisture have also gotten more like a black brown, which can be actual mold. I'm just going to assume that the spell book here, although beat up, is has been taken a little bit better care of. So we're just going to have age spots there. And you want to get a lot of paint off your brush here when you're doing this. You don't really want it to pool. So I'm unloading my brush a lot. Now it's starting to look a lot aged, right? So what we're going to do is also take these colors over our side deckled edge, make it a little more dirty. Again, using the glaze now as a glaze, just kind of painting it over to dull down the edges of these pages so that it'll work with our illusion of an old book now. And so we're not wiping out our work, we're just dulling the color a little bit. Suggesting maybe leaving a little bit more dark, dirty area down there near the spine. So that really seems like there's a lot of wear and age. Look how old the book is looking now. Hey, George. I mean, Hearthfire is kind of an orangey, right? I mean, it's a reddish orange, right? Or is it a yellow orange? Normally with oranges, I just suggest using Sunrise, George. Not sure, I don't remember how red or yellow Hearthfire is, but Sunrise is a great orange that has decent coverage, and so if you needed to go more yellow, you could add some lantern yellow, and if you needed to go more red, you could add a little bit of like cinnamon red or volcanic orange. But I really feel like, and if you don't want to go, if you've only got core, then I would go with, if you need a little more red orange and you've got the Pathfinder line, Cavalier is a good call. And explosion orange, or lava orange, I guess is the one I'm thinking of. Lava orange is also a good orange in the core line. Any of those. I mean, Hearthfire is a pretty straightforward orange, George, so just think about more like, what are you using it for? If you're trying to copy somebody else's recipe, though, I'm betting that Sunrise is going to work just fine. Alrighty, so we have a nice dirty book here. In fact, our problem is that the book is dirtier than the wizard. Like, now I feel like I should weather him. The book is very realistic. This is a very realistic take on how to paint tiny books. So it really does give you a really real, it really looks real. It looks more real than the rest of the figure. This is the problem we're running into. Hello, Jax. We're painting books today. Nice to meet you. I am just using some browns and reddish browns to dirty up these book pages, but I think I'm almost where I want to be before we put our lettering in there. Just adding a little tiny bit. But yeah, I think this is where we want to be. I like the book right now. For our raptor, huh? Then I would worry about the other colors on the raptor. But like if you're using an olive green for the rest of the raptor, then an orange should work okay. Alrighty, so that's looking pretty darn good. Now let's do some lettering. So I'm thinking about like so we should do a tiny like cat face with dragon wings and then try to do like a no, like an empty set sign over it. Hello, Masamune. Long time no see indeed. I am debating the freehand I wish to do. This is always the nerve-wracking moment in painting a book. You've created a beautiful old aged book. Now you must screw it up by adding freehand to it. So I think I'm going to start on the easy part and just do some lettering on the opposing page first. So I'm using my walnut. It's thinned about 2 to 1. I mixed it up again to make sure everything was in solution. My brush is very, very sharp. It has a very fine tip. I'm going to choose a line to kind of start on. Make sure my model is anchored nicely so that it will not move when I start doing this. Your initial line of text is going to kind of anchor everything else as far as kind of establishing a straight across line for you to ape. So be careful. And you want to do dots and dashes. Tiny letters. Yeah. You used to be able to do that, Eat to Surf, when we were using... Oh, I got paint on myself. 1 second. Hand in palette. Bad idea. When we were using Vallejo, if you thinned down Vallejo paint too much, it really would just like kind of come off when you scrubbed your brush at it, even after it was dry. And so we used to put down dull coat and then like do like freehand etched in white Vallejo, and then we'd just scrub it off if it didn't work. That was the save button. You'll still find tutorials out there from like long ago talking about that save button. More that we're trying to do things to scale. You're not trying to do actual letters, although you are trying to do some peaks and valleys. Here, see it? So we've got some dots, some longer, some larger forms and some smaller forms and some gaps, and that's the key. But you want that fine. The finer the line you can get, and you need a really good brush for this sort of thing. You have to have one of those expensive brushes. I've never seen anybody able to like do this sort of fine work this size with a Taklon. I feel like I'm too much. Always unload your brush. Unload the blazes out of your brush. Another line. It is Twisted Oma. I just didn't talk about that this time. If you're on my Patreon, I did a very in-depth video on painting a book just like this, and I do bring up foxing and I show pictures of it. The book tutorial is honestly probably one of my favorite tutorials that I've done on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig. For those of you who have signed up, our power went out and I was unable to email yesterday, but I have a couple people I have to send welcome emails to. So if you are one of them, I will be getting to that after the stream. Once again, you shouldn't sweat this too much if your writing isn't perfectly even. A lot of times it wasn't perfectly even in the olden days either, so especially if it's some wizard taking like handwritten notes. It's not worthless at all, Twisted Oma. Like the reason that I like backed you up there is that it is extremely worthful information, because if you're trying to paint a book and you're looking for examples of this, if you look up foxing old book, it will give you exactly what you need. So the exact terminology is actually quite important, not worthless at all. Alrighty. Now, all right, are we going to try this cat? If we screw up this cat, then we are totally going to have to repaint this whole page. But the chance for comedy is too great. So let's see here. I want a tiny cat face. We'll do a round tiny cat face. With tiny cat ears. This is where your paint consistency has to be really good. And then we need little bat wings, because we're going to do the cat dragon. We're going to take Pendrake's suggestion and say that this is a expel cat dragon. So to get this line, like I said, it's about 2 to 1, but my paint is getting a little stickier, so I need to be very careful. We thought about doing Hello Kitty Val, but I don't think I'm going to. I like Pendrake's Christmas cat tree dragon better. Like the wizard is trying to dispel the cat out of his tree. The cat dragon out of his Christmas tree. And mostly I'm sketching in at this point. Then I can make lines more solid or correct them as needed. I'll make angry little eyes. And I don't have any room for whiskers, curses. But I'm going to make a raw face. Make it look like this cat dragon has fangs. Kind of looks more like a vampire bat, but that's okay. I'll see if I can add whiskers. And it may be that this will just not work and we'll have to drop the wings. Because the wings block the whiskers. That's the problem. So I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to buff out. Yeah, I'm sure people have done Hello Kitties. Let's see if I can buff this out. Sometimes you can, but Master Series has really good adhesion, even thinned like this. I'm going to buff out one wing a little bit, and I'm going to try to just do whiskers and see if I like it better. So I got most of it off. Now I think I can probably paint a little bit of driftwood over it. A little bit of surgery. Hello, Ron. I am doing okay today. My back's a little twingy, but other than that, we are attempting. I think I'm going to actually wipe out this and make a bigger cat face. We were attempting a little winged dragon cat in our book so that we could be performing a dragon cat exorcism, but I have decided that the wings are not going to work and that it's more important to get the idea of the cat across. So I'm going to block this out, which should just take a few coats of my thinned paint. I'm using driftwood to cover this over as my white out, so to speak. Because the paint we were using is very thin and light, it's pretty easy to block over it. But yeah, sometimes you have to hit the erase button on these. Like when you start doing an image, if it's off center or it's just not working, like I felt like we couldn't actually convey the cat idea. And the cat concept was the most important for me. So that means back to the drawing board. Just kind of stipple over the top of it until you erase the image. Yeah. Man, I hate cursive. That's nice. Yeah, I'm not going to go and click through. Now, the nice thing about having a very messed up page, a very old book, look at how easily we managed to get rid of our image. And because the original image was done with really thin paint, there's no way it's going to build up or create a background line. So it's still a very, you know, the page looks just fine. We still have a dirty page. Now we just have to figure out how I want this cat to go. I thought it was scrolls that erased in first edition Eat to Surf, not spellbooks. Thought that was the point of a spellbook. You could transfer a scroll to a spellbook and it would disappear off the scroll, but then it would be permanently in your spellbook, but you had to spend the requisite stuff. Man, the crap that sits in your brain from 20, 30 years ago, right? How do I remember this? Why can I still, like, you know, recite passages of D&D rulebooks from memory? Why? Oh, cast from the page. Got it. No, you're right. I remember this now. Eat to Surf. So in other words, you could destroy your spellbook or sections of your spellbook if you were desperate for magic, which is actually kind of a cool mechanic if you think about it, if you were creating a fantasy world. all things considered. All right, I'm going to add just a little bit of water, just like a brushful, like that, to my walnut. Because I need to keep it smooth. I need to keep it where it'll come off the brush. It was getting just a little tacky there at the end. It was making a nice dark line, but it was not doing well. I would love it if we could get a cat face that worked. I think I'm going to do a triangular cat face. We're going to make our cat Siamese. I'm going to give up with the cartoony cat round face. All right. I want ears and ears and ears and ears and cheek fur and cheek fur and muzzle and tiny little nose and dashes for the eyes until we get a little better, and whiskers. There we go. Now I need to fix the eyes. Make them bigger and almond shaped. Sometimes you just put a little dash in at first to mark where things need to be. If that's too big of a nose, I'm gonna make that smaller. Well, yeah, I tried to do a cartoon cat at first, Robin, but I'm better at more representative art, so. Cats are hard to draw. I could do a dog or a wolf. I could do a wolf like in 2 flat seconds. But because of their foreshortened faces, I always found cats much more difficult. Especially to draw in profile. And I need to bring that eye a little bit up, and I need to bring the other eye a little bit down. This is why you sketch. It's easy to fill a book with text and diagrams. It's difficult. Plenty of cats look like bobcats. Plenty of domestic cats, I mean. I chose to do the floofy cheeks just 'cause. A little bit correction on that other eye. Hey, look, we have a cat. There is an excellent book on drawing animals out there. Eat to Surf. It's one I got as a kid, and it's still in print 50 years later. Well, no, okay, I'm not that old, but it was published, I think, in the 50s or 40s, and it's still, like, considered one of the best books on how to draw animals in the history of the world. Now I'm going to bring in a little bit more of a stable line. Once I've got my sketch, I can thicken the lines to make the picture a little stronger. But yeah, having it read as a cat is the most important part, and I think we've nailed that, so. I just want to get the face a little bit more defined. It's a yellow. Hold on, I think I've probably got it on my art shelf. Yep. All right, so if you ever want to learn to draw animals, this is the book I've had since I was a tiny kid, and this is actually the book. Like, it's falling apart. Its spine is, like, destroyed because I've looked at it so many times. This is the one. How to Draw Animals with the lion on the cover by Jack Ham. This sucker is so good. It's definitely not, I mean, it starts with the basics. It teaches you to look at shapes, but it also, like, breaks down, like, basic proportions and the differences of different types of elephants and stuff like that. Like, I had a niece of my last marriage who loved elephants, and this book actually shows you the difference between Indian elephants and African elephants and breaks them down. So, like, if you are looking to draw, let's see if I know they've got a house cat one in here. They've got big cats versus house cats. They've got a lot of different, like, simple approaches to cats. Like, there's complicated ones, and then there's, like, the simple approach on the other page. But it's just beautiful line work, and so if you do want to learn to draw, I think that, hands down, as a very classical art book, but really, really good. You know it's awesome if it's still in print after 50 years. Uh-oh. Need to make a room for it on my shelf again. There it is. Okay. Did he do another one? No. Different Jack. More shadow. This is my usual. You can do anything. Okay. With the Da Vinci Maestro, Series 10, Size 1, you can do anything. There's a reason this has been my brush to do everything with for 20 years. But, I mean, the key isn't really the size of the brush. It's the tip more shadow. And it's more about how thin your paint is and how much you unload your brush. So now the rip in the page tells me that the cat is always getting into the Christmas tree. So that's why that page got turned to so often. So I'm going to actually touch up my little picture here a little bit. Got a little bit too dark of that line right there. There. All right, kitty cat. Meow. Meow. Now do we want to put a big red empty set sign around it, across it? I know. I'm going to put words under it saying expel cat. In big caps, because it's a header. It's a header page. It's a title page. The spell is after. Or maybe we'll do it up top. Can I fit it? Can I fit it up there? Maybe. All right. It ought to be like Fellas Expellus. I never murder my feral. My ferals are always perfect. It's because I rinse compulsively. I'm not going to look up the Latin for expel cat. I've decided not to do that. Do I have enough room here, though, to actually spell and make it legible? Maybe. We'll try it. We're going to go for it. Let's go for it. The real challenge here is going to be the P and the A. So once again, I'm not going to talk while I'm doing this because I have to concentrate. E's are very hard because you've got a lot that you have to fit, a lot of lines. I think I can extend that down a little bit though. Let's see if I can scrub that. It's really recent. I should be able to scrub it. Yep. So if you hit your paint when you're thinning your paint a lot like this, if you hit it fast, you can totally scrub it off. Then you have to let that section dry again though before you try to reapply. So I think I will be able to fit Expel Cat in though. Yeah, but I can't fit that into this tiny bit, Good Twin. All right, let's try to rework this. Remember, loading is important, but unloading is more important. To load is human, to unload is divine. Is that the next t-shirt I should make? With a brush graphic on it? Okay, another E on the other side. Well, as I noted, I mean, yeah, the brushes do make a big difference. Getting a really good Kolinsky does make a difference, but it's also loading and unloading. It's how you use it. I need to watch it. My paint's getting a little tacky. It didn't want to come off there on the page, so I need to be very careful. Oh, and I screwed it up. Crap. Need to leave more space. I need an X there, not an E. I was stressing over the E so much I put it in the wrong place. There, better. Remember, you can also use light paint to kind of outline your letters a little bit afterwards to bring them out more. Right now, you just want to get them down. And the reason I'm starting in the middle is that's an old lettering trick that I learned in college when I took a hand lettering class. Start in the middle, work outward so that you space your letters correctly. All right, I've got it in. Now I need to solidify it. You guys can do all that Latin all you want, but I have very little room here. It's very easy for all y'all to say, oh, use all these big long Latin words. And we don't have room for those. Not even with my brush control. Know thy limits. I have painted many, many Space Marine shoulder pads with fake Latin, and I know my limits. So I'm going back over these letters to make them a little more solid now that I have a roadmap. And I'm also going to go around them with lighter paint to bring out the lettering. Just with little touches. Yeah, but then, I don't know, catnap doesn't, like, I guess it makes sense if we actually put the Christmas cat in the frame. That got a little messy, so we're going to correct that. Now we will bring in a little bit of highlighting. To lighten the area around the letters. But yes, as Pendrake says, using less letters. See, I chose to do short in two rows, which was harder. Catnap would have been much larger across. Expel cat. There. Yeah, the L was pretty subtle until I brought it back in. Expel cat. There. Boop. And now we will do more lettering below it. tiny in order to expel a... one second. More paint. Now we're getting close to the wizard, so I have to be careful. Feline from your holiday decorations. There. Turn page for more. Didn't quite, I think I could bring my lettering a little bit stronger down there. Let's do that. That's a bit better. A little bit more. I feel like that last line needs some work. It's because the angle's difficult. Very difficult angle down there. There we go. Sweet. And then if we want, we probably need to add some more lettering to the opposite page. Only for alchemy, Polly. Then that makes perfect sense. Oh, geez, it's 11:02 already. Well then, I'm going to finish up these little words and we're done. A little bit more. Well, at least we finished it. Finished it in one entire stream. Just gonna bring my lines out just a little bit here. There we go. Gonna bring this a little bit more strong. There. There. Then I would have just done graphs, you're right. I don't have enough room for a visual pun on this, Polly. Maybe for the next book, when we don't have a rat taking up most of one page. But expel cat would technically be spell spreadsheets for cats. So, I don't know. I would have had to, then I would have had to put like catnip at the bottom and then a graph showing like distribution of catnip or something. A little bit too much. A little bit too much. Too much for one 28mm book. So let's take a look. Looks good from this angle. You can see there's stuff in it. Although I think I'm going to do, if we can do this, so if Christmas Cat will indeed work in this diorama, then I may actually cut off Mouse's head and rotate it so that the mouse is glaring at the cat. That's what I'm thinking. Now, if you find that maybe your ink is a bit stark, you can take your Nod Bone color or something similar, create a glaze. Always make your light glazes extremely delicate. Really, really just colored water, folks. And put it over the top. Glaze over the top. If you put a couple of lightweight glazes over the top of something you've put text or cracks over, it will very, very gently blend in. Kind of make these look more like they're in the page. Yeah, it is. I mean, I made them to be really good at layering and glazing, and I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out, Shiza. So yeah, so that put a very light, see how it got a little bit more pale, but not too much, and now it looks like it's really integrated, I think. Sometimes when you put just a near black color over a parchment, it will really look like it's just painted on. And if you put a glaze of that parchment color over the top, then it really looks like it settles in and becomes part of the book. So there we go, everybody. We have a very realistic book on a very cartoony wizard. Well, Anne's love for realism comes to the fore when it comes to books. What can I say? So, and he's falling off in his blue stuff. You should like your blue stuff, your Darius the Blue. I'll have to knead it up and make it sticky again. So that's what we did today, guys. We did an entire book with the shading and the discoloration and the fine lettering and a cat picture that we had to draw twice, but I'm very happy with it now. So yeah, that's what we did. And tomorrow we will be back on El Bronze Galamo, where we'll probably do a bunch of the metal back here. Maybe we'll just try to get a ton of metal done. I might do that. I might just go crazy. Might just go crazy. Might need to do that. So that's what we're going to do. I hope you... Oh, no, not at all, Valthorn. If you're doing 5 or 6 layers, make sure that that's 4 drops of paint to 1 drop of water, and that you are also shaking the paint really well. If the paint comes out and looks at all watery, then it's not shaken well enough. Shake it up. But any Master Series color, like at most, for our most transparent colors, I might have to raise that ratio to 5 drops of paint to 1 drop of water. Maybe with really transparent stuff like Pathfinder, Tianzia Jade, I might need to go 6 to 1. But I mean, actually, if you go, Valthorn, if you go to my YouTube, I have a thing on base coating on there right now, a free thing, like 6 or 7 minutes long. If Quindy can give me, yes, that makes his, yeah, 4 to 1 should be paint to water. 5 to 6 layers should not, ever. Now, base coat matters. If you're using a bright or light color, always use a white undercoat. Don't use black. Otherwise, it can take that long. But yeah, I just did that's a thinning NSP, but I want my YouTube. On this show, Major Ursa, this is a Reaper show. So yes, but on Saturday I do a show on my own Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/paintingbig. And lately we've been working on a big bust for that one, this model. I was just starting with the hair and the skin tone, really bringing the skin tone around this past Saturday. So my Saturday show starts at 3:30 USA Central Time and is pretty much whatever I feel like painting. But this show every morning for Reaper at 11:30 USA Central Time here, this is always Reaper Minis. Thanks. So my YouTube is there, and I just did a free base coating video, and it uses Master Series. It actually uses red, and it uses a Pathfinder red. But it'll go over kind of just like, there's more to a good smooth base coat than you think. I realized this after I outlined it. So yeah, I mean, go watch if you are having, if you're needing like 5 or 6. Yeah, no problem. Yes, I do. Yes, twitch.tv/paintingbig. Just once a week, Major Ursa, because I do Patreon is my main thing. It makes me my living, and it takes a lot of time. So I don't have a lot of extra time for Twitch, but I do a Saturday stream just for fun for people, and we hang out. And I do, yeah, thanks for the follow. Thanks for hanging out, Sir, if you were fun. Wreath green over Reaper. Yeah, Wreath should have decent coverage. Shake that baby up. Yeah, that's weird, because gray is a light primer, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem. I don't have Wreath on me. I don't have Wreath here, so I can't test it. But my only thing, the only reason I could think of that it would do that is either it froze in transit, which I hope is not the case, or it just needs more shaking. But yeah, you should be able to see, like, a 4-to-1 paint, like, on a palette should do this. Now, if you're using a wet palette, that may be inhibiting things. If it's sat on the wet palette at all, it will leach water up into the paint and it will break your coverage a bit. But if you're using a well palette at 4-to-1, that paint should be pretty strong, and two coats max. Yeah. Cool, Major Ursa. I'll look forward to seeing you there. I'm still planning to do it this Saturday, so. But yes, okay. You got that raid, Quindy? I gotta get going. Gotta get my walk. It's actually like kind of sunny out. I need to take advantage of the weather. Really runny, that says to me that it needed more shaking, Valthorn. All of our paints will separate over time in the bottle, and you'll get a bit more of the binder, which is water, coming to the top. And so that can cause a very watery see-through paint. So shake it up again and squeeze it into a new well. See if it looks different. All right, and we're going to go over to Captain Mad Love. So everybody give her our love, please. And tomorrow we will be back with the Bronze Golem. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me this morning. I hope you all have a lovely day.